Silence is the sleep that nourishes wisdom. Francis Bacon. The boy, barely 15, was a whirlwind of motion. He talked incessantly, his hands fidgeted, his legs bounced. Stillness seemed an alien concept. He lived in a small village nestled at the foot of a mountain range. The villagers often spoke of a silent monk. This monk resided in a monastery, perched high in the mountains. One day, restless and seeking adventure, the boy decided to find the monk. He craved silence, not for its own sake, but to conquer it with his words. He set off on the steep path, his chatter echoing through the trees. The quieter you become, the more you can hear. Rumi. The climb was arduous. The boy, used to the ease of village life, found himself tested. Yet he pressed on, his resolve fueled by a strange mix of curiosity and arrogance. As he neared the top, the path opened into a clearing. There, nestled amongst ancient trees, stood the monastery. It was a picture of serenity. The boy marched towards the main building. He expected a grand welcome. Instead, he found a simple wooden door. He knocked, his usual boisterous self momentarily subdued. The door opened. A monk, clad in saffron robes, stood before him. His eyes held a deep, knowing calm. He did not speak, but gestured for the boy to enter. Speak only if it improves upon the silence. Mahatma Gandhi. The monk led the boy to a small room. It was sparsely furnished. The only sounds were the chirping of birds outside and the soft whisper of the wind. The monk motioned for the boy to sit. He then proceeded to prepare tea. He did so with a quiet grace. Each movement was measured, deliberate. The boy, used to the hurried pace of life, found himself captivated. He watched as the monk poured the steaming tea into 2 cups. The monk handed a cup to the boy. He then raised his own cup, not to his lips, but to his ear. He held it there for a moment, a serene smile gracing his face. Listen with your heart, you will understand. Unknown. The boy, confused, looked at the monk, then at his tea. What are you doing? He finally burst out, unable to contain his curiosity. The monk lowered the cup. What do you hear? He asked, his voice soft yet resonant. The boy, emboldened by the monk's gentle demeanor, took a large gulp of tea. I hear nothing, master, he replied. Just the wind and the birds. The monk smiled. Follow me, he said, leading the boy outside. They walked in silence until they reached a rushing river. The sound of water crashing against rocks filled the air. What do you hear? The monk asked again. Observation is a silent dialogue between the soul and the world. Unknown. The boy, caught off guard by the monk's question, frowned. I hear the river, master, he replied, his voice laced with a hint of impatience. The monk nodded. He picked up a small stone and tossed it into the swirling water. The ripples spread, disturbing the flow of the current. And now? The monk asked, his gaze steady. The boy watched as the ripples subsided, the river returning to its previous state. I still hear the river, master, he said, his voice quieter now, a sense of wonder creeping into his tone. The river speaks, the monk said softly, but only to those who listen with more than their ears. Silence is a source of great strength, said Lao Tzu. They returned to the monastery. The boy, for the first time in his life, found himself content to walk in silence. The monk's words echoed in his mind. He realized he had been so busy talking, he had forgotten how to listen. The monk led the boy to a garden. It was a haven of peace. Butterflies flitted amongst the flowers, bees buzzed lazily. Yet the garden was filled with a profound sense of stillness. Do you see how the flowers stand in silence? The monk asked, his voice barely a whisper. Yet they are strong. They endure. They bloom. The boy nodded, understanding dawning on his young face. He had always thought strength lay in words. He was beginning to realize the power of silence. Your mind is a garden. Your thoughts are the seeds. You can grow flowers or you can grow weeds, said an unknown source. The days that followed were a revelation for the boy. He spent hours in quiet contemplation. He observed the monks going about their daily rituals. He listened to the sounds of nature. He began to understand the monk's lesson. Silence was not emptiness. It was a space for reflection, for observation, for listening to the whispers of the world around him. He found himself speaking less. When he did speak, his words were measured, thoughtful. The constant chatter that had once consumed him was gone. In its place was a newfound stillness. He felt a sense of peace he had never known before. The most important things in life are often the least spoken, said an unknown source. The time came for the boy to return to his village. He was no longer the restless, talkative youth who had climbed the mountain. He carried himself with a quiet confidence. He bowed to the monk, his heart filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Master," he said, his voice sincere. "I have learned more from your silence than I ever could from words." The monk smiled, his eyes twinkling. He placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Go now," he said, his voice filled with warmth, "and carry the silence within you." The boy descended the mountain, his heart lighter than his steps. He knew he would never be the same. In the silence between the notes, the music is born, said an unknown source. The boy returned to the village a changed person. He no longer felt the need to fill every silence with words. He learned to listen, to observe, to appreciate the beauty of stillness. He shared the monk's wisdom with others. He taught them the importance of listening, of finding peace within. He helped them to understand that sometimes the most powerful words are the ones left unspoken. And so, the boy who had once sought to conquer silence with his words became a conduit for its wisdom, spreading the monk's teachings far and wide. He learned that true strength lay not in the volume of one's voice, but in the quiet power of silence.